All right. Good evening and welcome to another what is this? This is midweek. I guess this is Thursday, so happy day after hump day, I guess. Um, Tonight we're doing another edition of the Aftermath with Saul G. I'm joined as always by the Alfred to my Bruce Wayne, my man BJ in Knoxville, Tennessee. How you doing, man?
Good, how y'all doing?
Eh, I'm tired, man. I'm tired, man. I've been working a lot. I've been driving a lot. I'm in Illinois right now, so it's it so it's a situation where I've been, like I said, traveling a lot. Um, I don't know, man. I had a lot going on, man. I had a chance to sit back and listen to the entire. I guess you could call it the. I can't call it the. What do you call it? The Mueller hearing. Yeah, man. So I got a chance to because I had a long drive this morning, so I got to listen to all 8 hours
Yeah, I bet
of
it's
the.
crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just give my opinion on it real quick. I think there were a couple of things that stood out to me about it. Number one, oh my computer to cut off. Um, Number one was the messaging. The messaging really stood out to me because I guess you could say I'll start with the Democratic side first. Um, they just had like I think, and I don't know if this is where politics is going to go. It's kind of sort of like we're going to keep repeating things until it becomes something. You know what I mean? Like they're just going to have like a phrase or a saying or something, and it's just going to be like repeated. I don't know if they have like a powwow and they say, okay, this is the phrase that we're going to use, and we need every single person to say it because the phrase that they said all morning was no one is above the law, not even the president. No one. I mean, every single person said the same thing, and I'm just like, okay, yeah, we get that. We understand y'all are trying to get your point across, but that was number one for me. Number two, the Republicans, for some odd reason, they decided not to, I guess, take the opportunity to because okay, let's just go ahead and say when they talk about election interference, right? We already know what that means. That was the Facebook ads. That was the social media forms, if you will. Um, Basically, it was misinformation, right? We've already acknowledged that there wasn't any votes changed like in the computer, like the Russians didn't hack in and say, "Oh, well, let's take this vote for Hillary and give it to Donald Trump." No, that's
Yeah,
not what happened. You see what I'm saying? So we can acknowledge that the Russian government uh, apparently wanted Trump to be president for some reason. I mean, I can't answer that question. I'm not from Russia. I don't know any Russians, so I can't really answer that question of saying why. Um, some people said he would be easier on sanctions. It was just a whole lot of things. But like I said, the Republicans didn't even take the opportunity to basically even acknowledge. Okay, I think let's see, George has entered the room. This might be George. There he is. All right, so I'm gonna wait for you to get your audio on. Can you hear me, George?
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right, cool. All right, George. We were just talking a little bit about the just basically kind of sort of the Mueller probe. Just kind of start with before we kind of get into what we were going to be talking about tonight. But I just want to get your opinion, I guess, because first of all, just give a little, tell everybody who you are, kind of sort of, I guess, how you politically identify. I guess I really hate labels and stuff like that, but I guess for the sake of the show, we'll kind of get that out the way. Just get like a brief little background about yourself, so we'll know, so everybody else will know who we're talking to.
Hi, everyone. I'm from Dallas, Texas. I was born and raised there. I really like the state, and right now I'm in Florida for a vacation. I really hate it, but anyways, I took a political compass test at my government class at school, and I'm basically a libertarian leftist, which is pretty good because no one likes authoritarians most of the time.
You said so. A libertarian leftist. What is that? I'm sorry, because that's a new term for me.
Well, like on the political compass, there's like the upside is authoritarian, the downside
Right.
is authoritarian, the right is conservative usually,
Right.
right. Left is liberal, leftist.
Okay.
Whatever. Yeah. So just like libertarian, leftist, I'm not too authoritarian, not too libertarian. Just like if I have a X and Y axis over here, I would
Okay.
right over here.
All right, guys. So you're kind of left of center, is what you're telling me?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Because I guess like on your page, I guess you were saying more or less like you were more of a progressive. Do you feel like you identify as a progressive?
I am a progressive.
Okay, so you are a progressive. Okay, yeah, I just want to make sure. Now, just so we have a general understanding, what does, or just explain to me, what is it that a progressive believes in? Like, for example, I'll go first. I'm just a full out libertarian. You understand what I'm saying? I think the government in all aspects of the life is bad. The more government we institute in things, that's always gonna, for the most part, is gonna be a bad thing. So when I'm a libertarian, I'm basically anti-government. I'm all about keeping the government out of the business, keeping it out of like a social life, keeping it out of basically everything. So when it comes to like taxation and things like that, I want to keep my taxes low because I'm not really for a lot of government programs. But when it comes to social issues, I honestly don't care. Like, I'm perfectly fine with legalized drugs. I don't have, from a legal standpoint, I don't have an issue with gay marriage. And that's pretty much when it comes to like a lot of social issues. That's pretty much where I'm going to go. It really, as long as it doesn't impede on your rights as an American citizen, then I'm probably not going to have a problem with it. So as a progressive, what is it that you could kind of sort of identify, like, this is what progressive, or from your standpoint, me as a progressive, I believe what?
So basically, I just wanted to talk on a point that you made, but before I talk about my progressive. Anyways, you said that you're a libertarian on everything. On that, I don't really agree because you need government to step in for at least something, like to prevent murders or rapes or robberies like that. You need the government for that, or else the people are just go haywire.
Wait, time out. So okay, so then my first question is, you believe that is to me, I could, before we go there, I guess when you say the government would, let's say for example, prevent a murder, how would they do that?
Well,
you mean the police?
Well, let me clarify that. Not really.
Okay.
Mostly deter, because you can't really prevent them. Like,
okay,
the police are just used to deter them because
okay,
the murders. Like, I can't, like, no one can prevent anyone else from killing you. Like, if you're on the street, you can't prevent somebody from killing you that's right next to you.
right. Okay, well, I was about to say, let me just clarify something. I think you might be trying to place me in the anarchist category, and anarchist means like absolutely zero government. I'm not necessarily I'm not to that point. You understand what I'm saying? Because I believe the government does have its role. I just feel that the role should be limited.
Yeah, I agree completely. Like,
okay, go ahead.
I really hate the government stepping in on social issues. Like, it's none of their business. Like, if people want to do whatever they want with their lives, it's none of their business. They shouldn't stop people from getting married, like gay people from getting married, or marijuana. Like, I don't know why in Texas it's still illegal for some reason. I don't know why. When cigarettes kill people, and I had a great uncle that died of lung cancer. He smoked cigarettes. Those are legal, and marijuana isn't.
Right. Okay, well, see, like I said, right there, we're going to agree. Now, so that's how I say when I say I'm libertarian and everything, like, there is an extent, because the one thing I always call it the libertarian conundrum, right? Because there's certain parts of being a libertarian that I agree with only because of the fact of it makes sense in modern society. Like, for example, I don't mind being taxed for infrastructure, right? Because I'm not going to fix the roads. I'm not going to build the bridges. I'm not going to do that. I don't mind being taxed to pay for the military, right? I'm a vet myself, so I don't mind if my tax dollars go towards keeping the standing military. to protect us from any sort of outside whatever. I don't mind the government, like I said, in a limited capacity, but I feel like when the government becomes too powerful and too centralized, that's when any average, any day citizen can pretty much have their rights taken away. And because of the power of the government, there's pretty much going to be nothing you can do about it.
Yeah. So on the political spectrum, are you on the right or on the left, or just dead?
I'm on the right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I would say I'm definitely on the right. But I'll say it depends on what you're talking about, right? Because if socially, I'm more on the left, right? But fiscally, when it comes to like taxation and things like that, I'm heavily on the right. I'm heavily conservative when it comes to how I want my money spent and how I want the government to spend my money.
Okay. Do you have anything that you support on the right, like any policies?
You said, are there any policies that I support on the right? Well, I guess the thing about it is the way our government is set up right now and the way they have, for example, if we want to talk about the policies that are in place right now, it's to me more or less theoretical on both sides, because to me, Republicans aren't really conservative and Democrats aren't necessarily really liberal. It's more or less like proposed hypothetical laws and things of that nature. So I could take, for example, am I in favor of, let's just talk about the tax cut, right? I said that's what we want to talk about. We want to talk about the tax cut. Am I in favor of anyone's taxes being lowered? The answer is always going to be yes. No matter who it is, no matter what it is, if taxes go down, to me, that's always a good thing. When people bring up the deficit, I say, honestly, I don't care, because I didn't make that debt to begin with, right? When you talk about the deficit, it's a situation like this. If I gave you $1,000, right? And you went and take that $1,000 and you just blew it in the club, or you went out and party for a week, but I gave you the $1,000. Should I care that you went out and blew it on whatever it is, because I already gave it to you? So it's the same thing. I look at it with the government. If the government takes the money that I give them and they mismanage it, how is it my fault? And then you want to tax me more to make an adjustment on how you mishandle my money in the first place. So that's the reason why I say, if you want to talk about tax cuts. Now, this tax cut, I can say for a fact, because I'm also a business owner, so I can actually see it working when I pay people, right? So I know like the brackets and stuff, because when I put them in, it's almost to the letter, like the percentages that they say. So when people, I've heard it called different things or whatnot, but I say, if your taxes went down, I feel it's a good thing. Some people said somehow their taxes went up. I don't know. I can't speak for everybody. I don't know what everybody else see. I don't fill out everybody else's taxes. Only people I can see is my employees, my taxes, and they went down. I'm not going to make it seem like, oh God, they went down significantly, but they did not go up. They went down. So that's all I can say.
Also, everybody has a different, with tax cuts, everybody has a different situation, financial situation. So it's probably account for people losing or gaining a tax cut.
Correct. So if you want to start talking about a policy that I agree with, we want to talk about the tax cut. I'm not necessarily saying that this is what it accomplished, but I'm saying in theory, I'm always for tax being cut. I'm never really for taxes being raised, because you can't explain to me, if the government's always mismanaging our money, why would I want to give them more just so they can mismanage it even more?
Yeah, I agree. Well, Donald Trump's tax cut, this one, I was researching about it a little bit, and
Okay.
basically, the wealthy got a huge tax cut, and corporations paid $0 this time because of Donald Trump, and I think that's horrendous. And I think the tax bracket is horrendous as well, because the rich literally don't pay enough in taxes, and they make billions and trillions probably every year. I know that the rich in America, all of them combined, have more wealth than like the bottom 50% of Americans, and those are like millions of Americans. And I'm not saying it should be fair completely, like a socialist utopia. No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that we should make the lives of the poor less shitty, because right now they're suffering completely.
Right. Okay, so I'm gonna ask you two questions. Then the other thing, when you said there was zero corporate taxes, right? Now, once again, I told you I'm a business owner, so I can tell you for a fact that is not true because they tax us. Or let me tell you this: I pay a tax, I pay a payroll tax, I pay corporate taxes. You know, I have to pay them and file them every quarter. So when you say corporations don't pay zero, I have a corporation. I don't. I wish what you were saying was true, but it's not. What I can say is I didn't have a business before, so I can't tell the leveling off of the difference. But what I can say is they pay something. I can't speak on what these big corporations pay because once again, when you say they pay zero, I would ask you to kind of check that a little bit because it might not be these big corporations and they might have a way to kind of sort of write their way out of it. But the small business owner is paying corporate taxes if they are incorporated.
Well, probably small business owners, but I know Amazon paid zero and they're massive. Like they're worth like $800 billion almost.
Okay.
They paid zero, and that's completely unjust. If they're worth billions, that many billions, 800 billion, they can buy a country. They can buy large parts of Africa, South America.
Right.
Yeah, they can countries.
Okay. Got you. So let's talk about Amazon, right? So you think it is unfair that Amazon, paid based on what your findings found, because you said you researched it, based on your findings, you feel like it is unfair that Amazon paid zero corporate taxes.
Yeah.
Okay, the CEO of Amazon is Jeff Bezos, right?
Yeah, the richest man on earth.
Right. Did he pay federal taxes?
Well, I'm not sure about Jeff Bezos himself, but like I know corporations have been ripping off Americans since the get-go.
Okay, so then I'll ask you another question. Why should corporations, why should they pay corporate taxes as well? Why should they pay, like, bottom line is it's like you say, hey, look, I don't want to work for somebody. I want to start my own business. Okay, well, if you start your own business, then we're going to tax you for starting your own business. Why should you get taxed for starting your own business?
Okay, so for example, you as a small business owner get taxed. If you're getting taxed, why shouldn't big corporations get taxed that own tons of wealth? When
I agree. Well, what I'm saying is, but let's go to the root of it, which is tax. Why should corporations be taxed to begin with?
To build our nation, obviously, because we need money to fund everything.
Mm-hmm. So,
our military, so forth, our education, which is horrendous, but
right. Okay, so then my question is, you feel that it is the responsibility of the corporations, even though every single individual in this country is supposed to be taxed at an individual rate, you also believe that a corporation should also be taxed on top of that already federal, state, Social Security, Medicare, all those other taxes that we pay, sales taxes. I live in Georgia, sales taxes, property taxes. You got ad valorem taxes if you own a car. So all these taxes that we pay, you also believe that it's fair to tax a corporation as well.
Well, personally, I believe that, darn, I lost my train of thought. Personally, I believe that if like a corporation, a massive corporation that owns tons of wealth doesn't get taxed at all, then no, wait, like basically, I think people should be taxed individually, like on the amount of wealth that they have. Like if you don't, like if your business doesn't have that much wealth, it shouldn't be taxed all these taxes and whatever. Amazon should be taxed a ton of money since they're worth billions.
So basically, the bigger the corporation, the more they should pay, correct?
Yes.
And the more money you make, the more you should pay, is how you look at it.
Yes, correct.
Okay, so that kind of leads me to, so you believe in basically the redistribution of wealth?
Yes.
Okay, now I want you to walk me through this, and I'm just gonna see, how this works. Can you explain to me how redistribution of wealth works in your model of, okay, let's just talk about, we're gonna tax big corporations to redistribute wealth. Explain to me how that would look.
Basically.
So, yeah, go ahead. You can just use Amazon, or you can use whoever you want to as an example.
Bernie Sanders' plan, but this is for individuals separately. Like if they make over $10 million a year, and they should they should, you know, get taxed like 70%. I think that number is kind of outrageous.
Okay.
But back in the 1920s, they used to get paid. No, they used to get taxed a higher margin. So it would only be fair because the Nordic countries have this system. And they're really in healthcare and education. Not in our military. Not in their military, because obviously they don't focus on that much. And,
Right.
yeah.
Okay. So once again, okay, we would take all those people who make over $10 million and tax them at 70%. Okay. Then that 70% worth of tax revenue that we're taking in, explain to me how that works on the redistribution part, because I always understand the taxing part, but I never really understand how we actually, quote unquote, close that gap, if you will. So we're going to take every 70%. Go ahead. So then you just spread it out.
Yeah, we spread it out among the people who are struggling, help them with government assistance like free college, healthcare for all types of good stuff.
Okay.
You know, people are struggling.
Okay, so then, all right, so hold on, I'm sorry. I just want to interrupt you right there. So you want to take that money and not give it directly to the people. You want to put that money directly into government programs?
No, like it would kind of be outrageous to just directly give it to them, because drugs and all types of stuff that won't help them at all, because people are all the time. So we give them an option. Hey, do you want help? If you need it, you're like, okay, and done. We're done.
Okay, see, like, all right, see, this is where I would disagree with you on the redistribution of wealth, and I'll explain to you why. Number one, the redistribution of wealth, it's almost like, for example, I have a trucking business, right? So I'm in transportation. I have box trucks, tractor trailers, sprinter vans, things like that, right? So if I sit back and I ask myself, why don't I just have one truck and just drive it by myself and even worry about having employees? It is that drive to make more money, that drive to be more successful. That is the reason why I would want to, get more, vehicles, so that way I can make more money. Now, with that being said, if you told me, hey, look, the more successful you are in your small business, right, then eventually the more you're going to tax me, that would kind of sort of curtail my motivation to be more successful.
Well, that's a good thing. Like I think that people who like make more money and, keep it and try to, climb the ladder of success, they just like need to, because it's kind of a little bit greedy, due to the fact that we have people struggling and thousands of people dying who don't have health care, and it's just not fair.
Well, and then when you say it's not fair, I guess I say it's not fair because I would say this. If I started from the same point that they started from, why is it now my responsibility? Because I went out and worked hard to develop my own company. Nobody gave me anything. I did this all on my own, X, Y, and Z, from one truck to two trucks to one van to two vans to 3 box trucks. And I did all that on my own. And I started from the same poverty that they were in. But I just decided that I didn't want to be in that poverty anymore. And I actually went out and did something to do it. I learned a skill. I did what I needed to do to get up out of it. So when you start saying that it's not fair, I'm saying, well, why is it fair to me that I started where they started? But then when I pulled myself up out of there, it's like, well, it's great that you pulled yourself up out of there, but now we got to make it fair because they didn't pull themselves up out of there.
Well, obviously, after that, you're not going to become poor again. So that's just fair. But we're not talking about solely you paying for those taxes. We're talking about everybody, all the corporations, all the rich people, because obviously this country was built off of the labor of people, hardworking people who were not
right
at all, and people were abused all the time. Corporations abused people's labor. I know in Texas the minimum wage is $7.75 an hour, which is terrible. Right. It's just unjust. Completely.
Okay, so
we can't even survive off of that. We have
correct, and this is one of those things where I believe the difference between what I believe in and what you're trying to accomplish, because technically I'm not gonna say they're the same thing because they're not. The mode to get there is just differently. I'm gonna ask you a question. How many of my employees do you think make minimum wage?
I don't know anything about your company.
Like, let's say if I had 10 employees, how many of the 10 do you think make minimum wage? Wherever, it doesn't matter what state it is.
3.
0. None of my employees make minimum wage. Let me tell you why. Because I don't need the government to tell me how to pay a fair wage. That's my point. The point is sometimes we use the government as a crutch to say we know what the right thing to do is, right? Like you said, there's a way to amass wealth and do things in a proper way. But instead, you want to amass, like you say, you want to amass wealth on the backs of paying people $7 an hour to do a job that you could pay a lot better for, right? But you don't have socially responsible owners, right?
Well,
but the way I look at it is if you mandate it, right? If you just straight mandate this is going to be the bottom and everybody's going to go up, I think that it wouldn't be a good idea, only because you're automatically going to cause people at the top to have to change how they reconfigure their businesses. For example, have you been into a McDonald's lately?
yes.
Do you notice they have kiosk?
Yeah. To get rid of the
Do you
dump.
notice that, like that? Yeah, like pretty much they're taking away the cashiers the same way Walmart's done it, the same way all these other places are doing it, because they are seeing that eventually jobs that wouldn't necessarily pay a livable wage because it's a entry level job, right? Now they're going to want what we call a livable wage, right? And I think livable wages change depending on where you live, but at the same time, everybody wants a livable wage. But to me, in my opinion, is are you willing to work for that livable wage? Because if it's just given to you, then what is the motivation for those who support? Like, for example, like you said, for me, because I mean, you said, well, once I get rich, I'll never go broke. That's not true. You know, basketball players, rappers, I mean, people with money go broke all the time. Businesses go under. You understand what I'm saying? Everything doesn't stay that way forever. So a situation for me where, for example, I'll just tell you, the majority of the guys who work for me, they'll average anywhere between $20 and $25 an hour. That's where they are, right? None of them have CDLs to begin with. That's what they get paid to do the drive. That's it, $20 to $25 an hour, right? So if minimum wage goes up to $15, right? Then those guys who are already getting $20 to $25 who are now doing a skill, even though it's not a fully, CDL commercial license skill, they're probably going to want more money. So it's like, if you're going to pay me $15 to be a cashier, meanwhile, I'm making $19 to drive a truck. I'm making $16 and I drive a forklift. Why would I settle for that amount of money? And it's going to cause it's going to cause all the prices to go up.
I see you're making a point, but economists already covered that, and they said with Bernie's livable wage plan, whatever, that's not going to happen. Like the jobs will not be pushed out because of like kiosks and whatever. And you mentioned that your employees get $22 an hour to 25.
Yeah, 22, 25, yes.
Okay. Do you decide to pay them that much?
No, they agreed to pay that much. We agreed on the wages before they get hired the same way everybody else does. Because the people who make minimum wage, guess what? It wasn't a surprise when their check came, right? Yeah. Like I could go up to a guy and say, hey, look, I'll pay you $8 an hour to drive. And if they take the $8, then you pay them the $8, right? Because that's what they accepted. But then if I already offer something that's already over what they should be getting anyway, then it's really no point of even really insulting anybody by paying the minimum wage, right?
So both of you agree to that, but with big corporations, there's just, a flat, amount of money you get paid per hour, and that's it. And you can't negotiate or whatever. But
you can negotiate. You can always negotiate. It's always going to be what you accept. Yeah. Every job is always accepted. Nobody, slavery was abolished a long time ago. So because slavery was abolished means that if you go into a job, they will say, hey, look, I've been to past many McDonald's. I went into McDonald's today at this truck stop up here, and outside the door, it said starting wages, $12.25 an hour. Yeah. So if you start at McDonald's, you'll be getting $12.25 an hour. So my thing is, if you don't want to make $12.25, why did you apply and work at McDonald's?
Well, the thing is, you're making a point, assuming that people, have a choice to work there, many choices, but some people don't have degrees and don't have any choice, basically. They're struggling. They can only have that job. They can probably have 2 or 3 or whatever, but they only have that choice without a degree, then they have to take it. And they have to pay bills and whatever, health care, all types of stuff. And,
okay.
And means that they can't
Well,
survive, so they just need a livable wage.
so we need, okay, so then this is my question to you, right? And I'm just going to do this because this is, are you in school?
Yeah,
What's your major?
business administration.
Business administration, great, because I was a business major myself. So we're going to do a quick flow chart here, right? Okay, so we're going to talk about fixed cost and variable costs, right? Okay, one of your biggest variable costs in a business is what?
Well, I'm not sure. This was my first.
Oh, you going to be a first? Okay, well, I'll just explain to you. One of your biggest variable costs in business is labor, okay? So let's say, for example, you have 10 employees, right? You have 10 employees that are making, we're going to keep it simple, $10 an hour. Your labor cost, let's just say, just keep it simple, would be $1,000 for every single hour that your employees are working, right? So if they work 40-hour work weeks, $40,000. Let's say the government comes in and they raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour. Now those same 10 employees are now costing you $60,000, right? Instead of the 40 from before. So my question is, as a smart business owner, if my variable cost here was automatically changed, I didn't have to pay anymore for anything else. The only thing that changed was what I was paying those employees, which was a variable cost. Now my $40,000 is $60,000. The only way that makes sense in business to cover that $20,000 gap is to raise prices. That's the only way to do it. And if you look at any of your business professors would tell you that's the only way to solve it.
Yeah. So basically, you're saying that companies, obviously want to make more profit by doing that if they want to raise prices. But
because you're go ahead.
Basically, we're trying to get rid of that greed of companies, trying to, suck up all the money and paying workers less so they can make more and more money just for themselves instead of, more to the workers who are actually the ones struggling and working their asses off all week just for them.
Right.
Get rid of that greed at the source. So
okay.
That's what the plan is for.
All right. So then I'm gonna ask you another question, right? What risk does the employee take for having a job? What financial risk does the employee take?
Losing the job.
No, I'm saying but as far as the company is concerned, what financial risk does the employee take by having a job?
I'm not sure.
The answer to the question is zero. They basically have zero financial risk because guess what? If the employee drops the cash register on the ground and somehow it breaks, right? Who's responsible for fixing it? The owner. If the fry machine break, if the fry vat, if it breaks, if the grill goes down, if the ice machine ain't making ice no more, the employee, it doesn't come out their check, it comes out of the owner's check. So somehow when you start talking about greed, isn't there an allowable way that they need to make sure they have enough money so that their business can function? Because if hypothetically, you would basically be saying that there is a almost federally determined level of success and almost a federally determined level of profit, which would basically say anything over this profit margin is considered greed and it will be taken by the government.
I agree. I actually agree, but luckily this is not really my expertise because I've not really done that much research on the livable wage that Bernie Sanders.
Right. But see, when it comes to stuff like this, when people talk about livable wage and about minimum wage, what I'm trying to tell you is this, and I had to explain this to a guy, but I always laugh because you're from Dallas, so it's a little different. I'll consider you being in the South, so it's a little different. But I have this thing, and it's no offense to all my friends from this city, but I have a thing about people from New York, right? Because anything can be explained most of the time by them just telling you, oh, I'm from New York. Like that's supposed to mean that you know the answers to everything on the earth. So I had this conversation with this guy, and I just want you to listen to what I'm saying, and you tell me if you think it makes sense. We're talking about livable wages. We're talking about raising the minimum wage. If we do that, right, let's just take something simple like McDonald's. McDonald's has a dollar menu, right? Let's just say on the dollar menu, it's a double cheeseburger. So that means it's got bread, meat, cheese, tomato, pickle, onion, mustard, ketchup, right? And they can charge $1 for it. Now, what the nice New York man was telling me is, oh, you're under the impression that that burger really cost $1 to make. And I said, no, because if it really costs $1 to make, we're not making any profit. So that would be stupid. So I understand that people do have to operate under a profit. But what I am telling you is, if the people who work in the bread factory who aren't making $15 an hour, now they're making $15 an hour to make bread, the cost of the bread is going to go up. If the people picking the tomatoes that go on a double cheeseburger are now buying the tomatoes, the price of the tomato is going to go up. The people working in the dairies who are doing, the meat side and the cheese side, picking the onions, picking the cucumbers to make the pickles, all these type of things, these costs are going to go up. So if you increase my labor costs, I have to increase the price of my product. Yeah. And because the thing about it is, let's just be honest, if McDonald's sold burgers for what they really cost at a quote unquote reasonable level for what we should feel, a burger should cost maybe 35 cents. But once again, when you have this huge corporation like McDonald's, you got to think about, well, what does McDonald's have to deal with? We're talking about over 1 billion burgers sold. We're talking about a worldwide company that has all these different companies, every single country, just about around the world. So their profit margins and what they have to do to stay successful is a little different. So that's the reason why when people say, oh, don't worry, things won't go up, I'll put it to you like this. This is what I think will happen if they raise the minimum wage, right? Because right now, if you're a full-time employee, that means you work 40 hours a week, you are entitled to full benefits. You understand that, right? Okay, so if a guy was making $7.50 an hour, and then you say, okay, minimum wage is going to be 15. So you double it. What I see happening is a lot of people are just going to only be working 20 hours, and then they're going to lose their full-time benefits.
Yeah, they could do that, cut people. Yeah, I agree completely.
Okay, so let's go on to another topic. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. What's up? You had a question for me?
Do you support healthcare for all?
No.
Why?
Because I'm a believer in the free market, and I believe that the only way, if quote unquote healthcare is for all, then just put a brand behind it. You know what I mean? What I said? If healthcare for all is so affordable, put a brand behind it and sell it alongside of Blue Cross Blue Shield, sell it across, from United, Kaiser Permanente, Humana, put it right alongside it. And if it's so good, then people will just buy it anyway.
Well, I have to, correct you on something. Because,
okay.
Currently our system is not functioning well. We have 30 million people who don't have health care at all.
Okay.
45,000 people dying every year because they don't have health care. And,
okay.
The private industry is just not working. Like government-sponsored healthcare would be a savior for almost all Americans. Well, all Americans actually. Because the people who can't afford it, like if they have to go to the dentist and let's say have to go get a wisdom tooth pulled, they have to pay like $2 out of their pocket, and if they don't have the money, then they're just screwed. They just have to live with it. I was watching a video yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
Who had a terrible disease. I forgot the name of the disease, but she had like pain like in her eyes, in her nose, in her
right.
entire body. And the cost of the surgery was $11,000.
Mm-hmm.
She didn't have the money, so she wanted to make it cheaper by not using anesthesia. And by
okay.
It would be excruciating.
Correct.
Excruciating painful. So that would just be terrible. With healthcare for all, she wouldn't have to worry about that entire cost at all. Okay.
Now, I'm going to give you a counter to that, right? Okay, and this is what I'm going to ask you, because you're saying that if it was government ran, okay, I want you to do me a favor. Name something that the government does well.
Infrastructure. Well, obviously, the point is not for it to be well. The point is so people can have it. And I also want to point out a counter argument to that. The countries with healthcare are all European, like countries that have universal healthcare for all. And, the country with the best healthcare is Finland, I believe, and they have healthcare. And according to I think U.S. World Health Organization, I think.
WHO. Okay.
Yeah, those countries have the best healthcare. ever, like in the entire world, because they
Agreed.
have healthcare for all, and it's government sponsored. But we have a lot of socialist programs that the government sponsors, and they're not supposed to be like the best, because obviously they can't compete with the free market. But the free market does not help people in this situation at all. Like
Right, but see but then this. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm gonna let you finish. My bad. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, I have multiple issues with universal health care for all, but I do have a solution, and I've already stated this on another show, and I'll explain it to you. The reason why I'm against universal health care for all is because I do not believe the government uses our money appropriately. All right, I feel like there are ways that we could assist with some of the things that you're talking about, and there are ways that could be a whole lot simpler if something that you talked about earlier, greed, wasn't such a factor. And it's very simple because we already have a system in place that already kind of sort of does that in other areas, but we're going to kind of get to that a little bit later. So when you want to talk about, like, this is my thing with healthcare for all, right? If you can explain to me how everybody, like, as for example, if you say, hey, look, everybody could have healthcare, but you're not going to have to raise my taxes, go ahead, do it.
We're not.
Do it.
Here's the plan. So
okay.
Now is on a trajectory, and the current trajectory is that this current system will cost $2 trillion more than Bernie Sanders' plan.
Okay.
And actually, Bernie Sanders' plan for healthcare is $2 trillion cheaper than the current system is more expensive. So
okay.
in the span of 10 years with Bernie Sanders' plan, it'll cost 33 trillion. With this current system, it will be 35 trillion. So actually, we're going to be saving more than spending, and this healthcare plan will cover everybody, and it will be cheaper.
Okay, so I'm gonna ask you a question. Okay, so with this system in place, right, we're gonna abolish private healthcare, correct?
Well, it just depends on the candidate, but
I think that's what Bernie wants to do. He wants to abolish the private healthcare system.
Wants that. The thing is, it's because currently right now we have people who have better healthcare than others, and they get put in front of the line when somebody else is waiting so long for something and they don't have healthcare at all. So it's not fair, and
Right. But that's what I'm trying to say. But we would have to abolish the free market in the healthcare system, right?
Yeah. Because
okay. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Explain.
So if we abolish if we abolish the private healthcare system, then all we would basically, because that's what Bernie talks about. And I'm not 100% on this, but when he says single payer, that's what I believe he means by single payer. It means that we only have basically one choice, correct? Yeah. Okay, so let's say we get the single payer and we only have one choice. What happens when that one choice doesn't work? Or what happens if they say, hey, look, we don't have enough to pay for this one choice. We need to raise your taxes. What option do you have at that point?
Well, first of all, the taxes will not be raised, because obviously we know it's cheaper. And
wait, you said it's cheaper?
Yeah, like healthcare for all is cheaper than the current system than right now what we have.
Okay.
So also I don't understand what you mean by how this will fail. Like, can you?
Okay, I can elaborate on that. Okay, like for example, if you're talking about how the system will fail, like for example, every American pays Social Security, right? But they already talk about how Social Security is going to run out in 10 years. But we already paid into it. We still pay into it. So somehow the government mismanaged their government set up retirement system when everybody was on it. So my question is, go ahead. So, but then it's different, right? Because my thing is the government mismanaged our government retirement system, which is basically saying whatever you put in, that's what you're going to get out, and we're going to kick it back to you. However, when it comes to healthcare, remember we went back to that basic business model where we talked about fixed versus variable costs. Healthcare is not that fixed cost, which says, okay, I put $1 million in the Social Security. This is going to be my interest rate. This is going to be my payment. Healthcare can fluctuate. Like you said, you had a lady with a very horrible disease. People have cancer, leukemia. There are horrible diseases out there that people are going to have versus the person who just goes in there, gets a checkup. Boom, boom, boom. Okay, boom, do the little swab. Okay, I don't have no STDs. I'm good. All right, great. And then you walk back out, right? There are different levels of what people are going to have to pay. But at the same time, we've already seen a government-ran program that was something that was basically trying to somewhat be comparable to a 401k, right? Because it's like a 401k healthcare to me is a employee benefit.
Yeah.
So the government's already tried and failed at trying to do one of the most simple, because doing somebody's retirement, that's technically easier than covering the cost of all somebody's variable medical expenses and all the other stuff, because it's not really going to change that much.
So basically, you're just talking about the government managing money, and it just depends on who's managing the money. This has nothing to do with healthcare for all, but obviously Donald Trump, he said that he would want to abolish Social Security, which is terrible. And what I don't agree with the right is that one time I heard Ben Shapiro wanted to get rid of Social Security and fund give more money to the military, which is insane. It's just growing the military industrial complex even more. Right now, we're spending like $700 billion on the military, more than the next 10 nations combined, like China, UK, France.
All right.
So forth.
Okay. I'm going to give you an example of where Medicare for all already exists, but it doesn't work. And then I'm going to explain to you my problem with Social Security real quick. Okay, first of all, I get Social Security because it's the easy one, right? So I already told you I got a business, right? So let's just say I need some capital. I should be able to go to the government and withdraw my Social Security now because I need it now. Why can't I do that? Why do I have to wait till I'm old?
Well, because obviously right now you're still at an age where you can still work, like you still have the energy and you still have the stamina, but unless you have a disability or unless you're old and helpless, then
well, that's not necessarily true, because earlier you said that there are people who can't work or they got to find these bad jobs. So there are people who are able to work, but they still can't access this money that they're going to Social Security. So my thing is, like, what about the person who makes under $25,000 a year, but they have $40,000 stashed away in Social Security?
Well,
why can't they get their money and make their life better?
Because obviously it's for retirement, and if they take it out at that point in their life, then when they retire, they won't have any money at all, and they'll just be struggling even more at that time, since they're old and they can't do anything at that age.
Okay, so you would prefer other people to pay into the system and then give it back to them instead of them just taking the money they already put into it and just pulling it out?
Social Security is something else, but we obviously us progressives will be helping them with other programs.
Got you.
For all, and what's the other one? Free college, yeah.
Free college. Okay. Now, all right. So now I'm gonna explain something to you. All right. So like I told you before, I'm a vet, right? So, what percentage of the American population are veterans? Do you know?
I'm not sure.
All right. So it's under 8%. It's right around 17 to 18 million. Okay. So if you are a vet, right, guess where you get to go for all the healthcare that you want? Do you know?
No.
The VA. Yeah, right? The VA. If you are a veteran and that is one of your rights that you get, will always take care of you if you're sick, basically. The VA is awful, and it only covers 7.5% of the country. So you want to add on a program similar to that, which basically says it doesn't matter if you're sick, if you need prescriptions, go to the VA. If you need surgery, go to the VA. Pretty much any medical needs you have, you can go to the VA if you're a veteran and be taken care of. However, what was one of the biggest talking points of the 2016 election was fixing the VA. If we can't fix the VA and it's only for 7.5% of the population, how are we going to add on another 92% of this country? Plus, based on the last Democratic debate I saw, the what do you prefer to call them, undocumented immigrants as well, are going to be on the same healthcare system as us. So how are we going to cover all those people if we can't even get the VA straight for veterans? We can't even get the troops Medicare for all basically straight, but we're going to do it for the whole country. I don't see that happening.
The thing is, we can, but just the people that we have in power aren't doing anything about it, aren't funding it properly, aren't doing anything really.
Okay, now that part I will agree with you on. That part I will agree. The people who we have elected in power are not doing what they're supposed to do. There we will agree. Now, you also said you're for free college, right?
Well, you know why?
I'm listening.
A lot of developed countries in Europe have it, free college,
Okay.
like Germany, UK,
Right.
Nordic countries, they have it, and the countries with the best education happen to be those countries, and it's free
Okay.
college, not private college, and it should be free, just like our public high school. But anyways, the plan on how to pay for it, it's pretty simple. Bernie Sanders already has explained everything. He has
Mm-hmm.
a tax on Wall Street, where basically 10 years, in a span of 10 years, that tax on Wall Street will raise about like $2.4 trillion, and it
Okay.
will, cover the student debt that we have right now, and then we'll be good.
Okay. See, now this is another part where we'll agree, and this is once again what I've said because I've already made this point before, and then this will go back, and I'll go ahead now and explain my healthcare fix, right? Because a lot of people say they're not for free education, right? But guess where their kids go? Public high schools, public middle school, right? Public education is free school, right? But we're okay with it K through 12. But once it expands into the university, now all of a sudden it becomes a problem, right? That's a conservative thing, right? Like a lot of conservatives might say they have a problem with free education, right? But we're already in a system that already basically has it set up, right? And nobody has a problem with it when it's K through 12. It's just if you want to expand your education, now it's a problem, okay? Now, I do not have a problem with free college. My only point is, if you can explain to me how you're going to not raise my taxes, because guess what, right? You know how we pay for public education? It's done basically by property taxes, right? So if I live in an apartment, I'm getting the free education, right? Because I don't pay any property taxes, right? So it's a situation where we have already had a system in place to do free education. What I'm not in favor of is we say, okay, we're going to make all college free.
Well,
And if we make all college free, but we're going to have to raise taxes.
basically, this is not going to raise anybody in the middle class taxes, anybody in the poor class taxes. It's
Just upper class.
like raising levies, or like I forgot the explanation. It isn't really like a tax, but obviously when I Googled it, economics,
I got you.
economists,
Okay.
yeah, it could work perfectly fine.
Okay. I mean, when you talk about free education, I need to see how they're going to, I mean, like it is with anything. Like they always talk about, like the biggest knock on Trump when they talk about the wall. Oh, we don't want to spend $1 billion for this wall. We don't want to do this. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. I'll give it to you. How are we going to pay for it? Remember, the big campaign promise was who's going to pay for the wall? Mexico was going to pay for it. I've heard Ted Cruz say El Chapo is going to pay for the wall. So anytime it comes to paying for something, I'm in 100% full agreement with you on that. It needs to be explained to me how you're going to do it. Because if you say right now we're being taxed at this level, we're not going to raise your taxes, but we're going to have all these new programs come in, then you're either going to increase the deficit, right? And if you increase the deficit, eventually you're going to probably have to start increasing taxes after a while. So my thing is like this, and this is why I said I don't care about the deficit, right? Because I didn't make the debt. If the U.S. government wants to take on that debt, and it is to no responsibility of me, have at it. Have at it, because it doesn't affect anything I do. If people want health care, whatever the case may be, and they want Medicare for all, and the government doesn't raise taxes to do it, I say have at it. It doesn't bother me. It doesn't affect me. But I know it's going to have, there's no way they cannot pay for it. And they're saying they could tax Wall Street. And I'm like, to me, Wall Street is almost a, how can I say it? Wall Street to me is like a hypothetical, right? We're not really talking about Wall Street in New York. We're talking about the stock market. So does that mean everybody who has stock is going to be taxed extra? That doesn't make sense.
I'm going to explain to you right now.
Okay.
The proposal would cost $2.2 trillion over 10 years, which is
Okay.
as would be paid for with this Wall Street tax. He proposed a Wall Street speculation tax in 2016, which would raise small levies on buying and selling stocks, bonds, and
Okay.
many experts estimate it could raise hundreds of billions of dollars annually. Sanders' office cited progressive economist Robert Poland's projection the tax would bring $2.4 trillion in revenues over 10 years.
Okay.
It's basically like that. But I always argue with Trump supporters online, and they basically go into my comment section and say free college is unpatriotic or stuff like that.
No, well, see, this is one thing I'll tell you like this, because like I always say, I mean, I always say, like, I'm on the right. I don't knock it. You know what I mean? Like, I vote about 60 to 70 cent Republican. You know what I mean? But like, I'm not just ingrained, and I can tell when something is stupid. Like when people talk about, like, for example, people was like, because I got student loans, right? So people was like, hey, we can forgive your student loans, but we don't have to raise taxes. Do it. You understand what I'm saying? Like, I don't understand why some people are so stupid where they're like, no, I want to pay that bill. You're insane. If the government wants to take on that responsibility for me and it doesn't cause my taxes to be raised, that's what I call a government that is actually functioning for my benefit. The same way the government should be functioning to keep my roads, bridges, and military functioning, so that way I feel safe and I have nice roads to travel on, right? A situation where the government is working for me, that's fine, but I feel like more or less the government, more times than not, the government works against me.
Basically, some other Trump supporters I was arguing with, they were basically telling me that what was it? Healthcare for all. Oh no, wait, it was about the military. Yeah. So basically, I was saying that we should cut down on the military, and they were basically telling me I was anti-American because I said let's cut down on the military because we have a massive budget that's bigger than any of the countries' militaries on the planet. I was saying let's cut down on that. He's like, oh, that's anti-American and whatever. I'm like, okay, that's just so stupid because
so then I have a question for you then, right? So can we just tax Wall Street and keep the military where it is? And we'll just tax the rich in Wall Street to keep the military where it is. Can we do that?
The thing is, we don't need that massive budget because
yeah, but then you're saying, right, but see what I'm saying is if it's okay to tax it for healthcare and for free college, why can't we tax it for the military? Huh?
Because the thing is, the military, is just used for offensive wars right now, basically, and we could just take.
Wait! You said offense, so the United States has never protected anybody with their military?
We have, but currently, right now, we're in the Middle East for no reason. We shouldn't even be there.
Agreed.
We spent
Agreed.
$1 trillion there, so we shouldn't even be there. Like I'm completely anti-war unless they, attack us first. Other than that, we can't be there. But anyways, we have this, massive budget, and our education is like the budget for that is like 75 billion, and our massive military budget is 700 billion. So obviously, the government just wants to, put all their money into the military. We at this point, like, if we don't have any, defensive wars, we got to take some of that out because
Right. But you do realize that your free college and your Medicare for all would be more expensive than the military?
Yeah.
Combined?
The thing is, like I explained to you, our current system is more expensive for healthcare for all, and Bernie Sanders just plan is cheaper, and also free college basically is paid for by taxes.
Gotcha. Well, no, I wouldn't say free college is un-American because I believe that like technical schools and stuff like that are free in Georgia a lot of times. So people can go learn a skill and a trade. And I feel like there should be nothing blocking those people from getting a skill or a trade. So I have no issue with the concept of free education because the system is already in place that we function in. The only thing about it is, like, for example, if public education came and said, hey, look, property taxes aren't getting it done. We're going to need to take 10% of your earnings to help pay for schools. I think that would be a harder sell. You want me to tell you why? Because now you're going to have to, I think the reason why people kind of sort of just shoulder shrug at public education is because they don't really see the effect, right? It's just like your property taxes. So if you're in an apartment, if you're a kid, if you're on public housing, you don't worry about it because you don't pay property tax. So you honestly don't care. You just know it gets paid and you don't have any responsibility towards it. But if it was a situation where now you got federal, state, Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, public education coming out your check, that's going to be a whole different thing. Because now you're going to be like, oh, well, this school better be damn good if it's going to start coming out of my check. You understand what I'm saying? So like for me, my constant, not really battle, because I don't really do debating anymore because 97% of the country is stupid anyway, and they're to a partisan extent where they can't get out their own way to discuss something logically. Like for me, I can disagree with you. Like I said, we don't have to agree, But it's not like I have to be like, yo, George, you're stupid for the way you think. You're a socialist, and you're trying to destroy America. What's the point, right? You have your opinion, right? As long as you know, that's the reason why we say, right, like all the biggest thing is this is a democracy, right? Which means what? You got the right to worship what you want. You got the right to believe what you want. You got the right to do what you want, as long as it doesn't impede on my freedoms and my civil liberties, right? Do whatever you want, pretty much, right? But if I disagree with you, that's a problem. So that's the reason why, like I said, I don't really get caught up in that super partisan stuff, because like I said, I can find examples of healthcare for all. Healthcare for all is healthcare for all veterans, right? We already have it in place. It doesn't work. We already have free school. It's K through 12. You could kind of say it works depending on where you live at. You know, the more money that the bigger the houses are, the more property tax that people pay, most of the time, the better the schools are. The schools that have basically 75% of their population that lives in apartments, their schools normally aren't that good. I don't like using the term inner cities. I can just kind of say, where the brown people are. Most of the time, where a lot of brown people live, the schools aren't any good. Why? Because the houses are most of the time cheaper, except for like in parts of Maryland. Maryland is like the one example where it's like, yeah, you got black middle class and they have good schools for some time. And there's a couple of other cities. I'm not going to knock every single one of them, but that's basically how it's done. So when people talk about these certain policies, I say it depends on the extent that you want to impede on my freedom. You understand what I mean?
So basically, you said that the government was going to take away 10% of your federal earnings.
No, I was just giving an example. Yeah, go ahead. I wasn't saying that's what they would have to do. I'm saying if you can give me free college tuition, right? Because I'm in grad school right now. Yeah, and I go to well, I ain't gonna say their name, but I go to an online school that is located in Virginia, right? So if they told me, hey, look, we just got a new program, you don't have to pay any tuition, I'd be like, oh, that's great. But then all of a sudden, if I look on my check and I'm like, well, damn, what happened to my check? And they're like, well, yeah, we got it that way. Then to me, it's like, nah, I don't want it, because the other thing about it is if I'm not using it, right, then why should I have to pay for it?
Yeah, I agree. So basically, I just like, I know Bernie Sanders really copies a lot of the European countries because they're very successful in these things. Just not like they don't focus on the military as much as we
right.
do. Like the majority of the countries don't really focus on the military as much as we do. But like I think in America we should be focusing more on education, because schools that I grew up in were like in Richardson, Texas, which is not a good area, like it's right next to, and Dallas schools are complete garbage, and like a lot of people want to like stop their children from going there because they're completely garbage. Richardson, they're a little better, not that much.
Right, but you notice most of the big cities don't have good school systems.
Yeah.
Like if you think I can't name one off the top of my head, but I can't think of one. Like Atlanta public schools, no. New York City schools, no. Dallas, no. Houston, no. LA, no. Chicago, no. You know what I mean? So a situation for me where I look at it like I'm more or less about finding a solution. And what I always say is if we can take the money that we already have, right? And that's what I'm trying to say. So let's say we have all these programs that we want to do and we want to help people, because I'm not against helping people, right? But my thing is this, and this is what I had talked to BJ about, and he said that makes a lot of sense, right? Because we've already seen the model, like when you lived in Richardson, Texas, right? You went to school based on where you live, right? Okay, so why can't we take that same model and use it for healthcare? And basically say what you'll do is you'll have a community center that basically says everybody within the same school district, you're going to go to these doctors. So you'll basically have a medical center that'll only handle the people who will basically be in your same school district. So let's say, for example, that would be maybe 4,000 households. And those 4,000 households would pay, let's say, let's keep this math simple. So the 4,000 households would pay, well, hold on, I want to keep it simple. So let's just say 1,000 households. Let's keep it simple. All right. And then all of those 1,000 households would pay into, let's say, $300 a month, give or take, right? So on a small scale, because you've only got 1,000 people, that means that they would be putting in $300,000 a month into that medical office, right? So, not to include all the other ways that you could tax it the same way like on property, this is basically just like your premium. So we set up premiums, and let's say like those 1,000 people end up having about, let's say $3 million in premiums, right? So then all you got to do is staff it with a general medicine, an OBGYN, a pediatrician, a dentist, optometrist, or whatever the case may be. You basically go all the special dermatologists. So you basically got 10 doctors, right? Remember, we got like $3 million here. We got 10 doctors. You tell all the doctors, hey, look, you're going to make, you're going to make right around $50,000 a month. Okay. $50,000 a month. You're not going to have to pay malpractice insurance, which is extremely expensive. So every single doctor in that practice will make $600,000 a year without having to pay malpractice insurance, right? And then the other $2.4 million can go towards the cost of prescriptions, can go towards your nurses, your equipment, your building, all the rest of that stuff. And basically your community center would be the only place you could go. The government would come in for emergency situations only. For example, you get hit by a car crossing the street and you got to go to the hospital. That's when your Medicare for All kicks in, and they're going to handle your emergency costs. Because for your routine care, I believe that the only way you get actually good health care is when you have it available and accessible to you all the time. And there is no fear of cost involved. Because the doctors don't really worry about what procedure they're doing. They don't really worry about any of these type of things. And then for like your zip code or whatever, you would have a surgical center. And then the surgeons would get their specific pay based on that. You see what I'm saying? So basically, we would have all these kind of instead of having all these individual doctors' offices, you would basically just have these medical centers that would work the same way you would with a high school, same way you would with a middle school, the same way you would with an elementary school, and you would only take care of your community. You would only know your doctors. You only need your license to prove, oh, hey, look, I live at 125 Main Street. Here, that would be the only thing that you need for healthcare. That's it. You don't need anything else. To me, that type of system makes a lot more sense to me because it puts everybody back in the community. You're only paying a certain amount. And I think $300 to $400 a month would not be a big deal because, like I said, you got to think about some of these high schools got 3,000, 4,000 kids. And then that way people have plenty of time to get actual care. You understand what I'm saying? Because you're only competing with 3,000 other people, and those other 3,000 people got to work and do other things. So it's not like 3,000 people are automatically just going to all need healthcare at the same time. You understand what I'm saying? Or they're all going to, like me, I'm never going to go to an OBGYN. So if half of them are men, right? Like that's the one doctor that's just going to be straight to women. You understand what I'm saying? So a situation where I feel like to me, that's a much better solution because it doesn't put a huge burden on the individual taxpayer and on the community at large. And it also kind of brings everybody together to kind of do some common good. I'm for the common good. I'm just not necessarily with the government mandating that's how we do it.
Yeah, I agree. I was also reading an article on the internet, and it was basically talking about prescription drugs in America. And,
Okay.
In America, like there's a story about drugs for epilepsies. Here in America, they cost thousands of dollars.
Mm-hmm.
While in Europe, they're like $40 per bottle or whatever.
Right.
And it's just insane here because people can't afford that. And if they can't afford that, what happens? Oh, they'll have epilepsy. Who knows? They might die, or have something catastrophic happen to them, which is not good. And I think the greed of these pharmaceutical companies wiped away, but
yep.
Completely.
I would agree with you on the greed of pharmaceutical companies. I would agree on you on the cost of prescription health care, right? I would agree with you on that. I feel like prescription drugs are too expensive. But then I would once again turn around and ask you, whose responsibility is it to keep those costs low?
Theirs, because obviously it doesn't cost that much to get those drugs or make them or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But they raise them to insanely high prices just to make a lot of money. Also on marijuana, pharmaceutical companies, want to buy up politicians and tell them, hey, make it illegal because it actually helps a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
But like people have medicinal marijuana in Florida. I know that's legal here.
Right.
But in Texas, it's illegal completely, even for medical purposes, which is
Right.
unfortunate. And honestly, maybe pharmaceutical companies have a cure for cancer, but they're not releasing it because if they do, then they won't make profits at all.
Mm-hmm. Well, the way, and I would agree with you on that, but I think that's one of the reasons why marijuana is not legal, because it's like a medicinal purposes that you can basically grow in your backyard, right? Like my thing is, it's a painkiller, it's a relaxer, all the different types of things people say they can smoke marijuana for or ingest marijuana for to assist with the CBD oil, helping with the what is it, autistic kids, or I forget which type. Is it autism, or is it? I can't remember if it was epilepsy or autism, but it's one of them. I can't remember which one it was, but apparently parents were saying when their kids were on that CBD oil, they were a lot easier to manage. But that's once again that's where I say I'm full libertarian on that. Like, why are you trying to tell me what I can put into my own body, right? Because people always say, well, what if you do something crazy on it, right? And I always say, well, that's because we have crimes in this country, right? Whatever I do on the drug, right? Like, for example, alcohol is illegal, right? If I drink all the alcohol I want and I just go home and I pass out on my couch, no problems, right? As long as the police don't pull me over, it's no big deal. If I drink all the alcohol I want and I get in my car and I go kill somebody, right? Now I've committed a homicide. So why is it just not the same application of some sort of crime when it comes to marijuana? It's like, oh, well, you could go smoke pot and just kill somebody. Well, that's why we have murder is illegal. The same way if I go out and drink or do anything else, that's what doing. People say, oh, well, marijuana, we don't know the effects on your brain. Well, we know the effects of cigarettes on your lungs. We know the effects of alcohol on your liver, but it's still legal. So my question is, why are you trying to control what I put in my body? And I know a lot of people, especially a lot of conservatives, will say, they have moral objections to it. I'm just like, well, if you have moral objections to that, explain to me the difference between that, cigarettes, and alcohol. And then they'll explain to you why cigarettes and alcohol should be legal and why marijuana shouldn't be.
So I also think that I also think that cigarettes and alcohol are legal because pharmaceutical companies actually want people to get sick so they can make more money off of people being sick and give them drugs and whatever and so forth.
Well, I mean, it's like if you look at a cigarette, it's just not tobacco. You understand what I'm saying? Like, it's all those other things that they put in there to make it more addictive and do things like that. So that's the reason why, like I said, I think it kind of goes a little different. The last thing that I kind of want to talk to you about, and I'm just curious, because I know you talked about some of the progressive things that you believe in. Now, the first thing on, I believe on your profile says you are for LGBTQ plus rights.
Yes, I am.
Okay. When you say you're for LGBTQ plus rights, what rights don't they have that you want them to have?
Well, I know that the Republicans were, stopping LGBT people from getting married and so forth. And I know there were like some transgender bills and whatever to prevent them from using restrooms. But
okay.
I know in states, like in Alabama, I know there's a story that from Arthur, there was two characters, Mr. Ratburn and some other character, like two girls getting married, and they're preventing children from seeing that. I don't see anything wrong with it because children need to know that they exist and that there's nothing morally wrong with it. Because as an atheist, I don't see anything wrong with it. I used to but
no. Okay, well, I just got a quick question. Okay, because we're gonna talk about the first right, and the first right that you talked about that you want for the LGBTQ plus community was you spoke to the transgender about the right to use the bathroom, correct?
Yeah.
Now you believe that the right to use the bathroom identifies what that person physically believes, or do you believe it identifies with their actual biological sex organ?
Well, I think that it's what they physically believe, but I'm not educated as much on the transgender topic. I don't have that many. I don't have any actually.
Yeah, me neither.
Like I'm more focused on the gay rights, lesbian rights, because there are people who still have a problem with it, and try to prevent people like in public from PDA or whatever.
Well, okay, so this is just one of the. It's not an issue, but it's a small issue I have when you use the word right. Right. One reason why I have an issue with the word right is because they can do everything that any other citizen can do. Now, it might not be equal. They might not get treated the same, but at the same time, they can still own property. They can still own a gun. They can still travel. They can have a passport. They can have a job. They can do everything they want to do, except for maybe have the same equal acceptance in society as a heterosexual couple. So I feel like you're more or less for the equality of those people and not necessarily rights, because when you talk about rights, since Barack Obama made it legal in, I want to say 2012, what happened? In 2015, yeah, it's actually, and that's what I'll try to say. Once it was made legal, it's actually unconstitutional for you to deny a same-sex marriage or not to recognize it.
I know in a lot of states, like it's still legal to discriminate against LGBT people. I think in 30 states. I know in Texas it is. Like they can throw them out of a restaurant just because they're gay or whatever. I know in Alabama they try to stop it. Like in Alabama and Mississippi, it's a terrible place for them to be there. Not as bad as the Middle East, but it's still not good. I know that there.
And I think that would. And I understand that, but I would say that goes to more of. But I mean, I can respect that. Then you would want to say that you would want to take away the right to refuse service, and everybody should be granted the right to have service from everybody.
Yeah, everybody.
Okay, so then that would be to me a legal issue, but not a right issue, because they still can go out to eat. You understand what I'm saying? But I worked in the restaurant industry for like 10, 15 years. I can refuse to not serve anybody. Hypothetically, I'm not supposed to be doing it in a discriminatory manner. So if it's being done in a discriminatory manner, then I feel like that is wrong, because I feel like everybody has the right to go out to eat. It shouldn't matter. So I would agree with you on that. So they have the right, that you want them to have the right to go out to eat without discrimination. Is there anything else that you say that you're, kind of fighting for? What else?
Well,
because honestly, I feel like when you identify what it is that you want, it doesn't become as like, oh man, you're just some whiny liberal who's always jumping on some little bandwagon or whatnot. Because if somebody says so, let me get this right. If somebody's gay, they don't have the right to go out to eat a meal without having to be kicked out just because they're gay. Anybody who says anything otherwise, then yeah, they got the right to go out to eat is an idiot, or whatever term you want to put in there. But that's stupid. I don't see where it matters whether you're Democrat, Republican, conservative, liberal, whatever the case may be. If you're in agreement with somebody being discriminated on when they go out to eat, then I'm like, I can't agree with that. So we got the right to go out to eat. What else?
I still have a problem with Republicans trying to prevent it, because I remember in 2015, 4 Republicans on the Supreme Court tried to prevent it from being legalized because
marriage.
But,
you mean the religious liberties?
No, because it defies religion a lot, and basically, in government, they were kind of being hypocrites on that because they weren't following that at all, and but
the one thing about when people use that term, to me, I feel like a lot of people use that term different. I mean, and it's just my opinion. I don't believe that's what the founding fathers meant. When people say separation of church and state, I don't believe that's what they meant. I believe they did not want to follow the A model of the Holy Roman Empire, which means that the Vatican, right? The Vatican, they saw how powerful the Vatican was for centuries, and they said, you know what? We need to separate the church and the state, because the papacy is a combination of church and state. What was it? What King Henry VIII did when he made himself the he made himself something over the Church of England. I forget what title it was, but he made himself basically the I don't want to say the king, but whatever, the chancellor over the Church of England. So we saw I feel like the Americans, they kind of saw, okay, we don't want to do that. I don't believe that it means that you separate God from laws and you separate things like that. I just believe, like it's saying, we will not have a Church of the United States of America, and we will have some Pope-like figure over it. That's my interpretation of it. But I mean, I hear that all the time.
I don't think God should be involved in any laws whatsoever, because when Christians try to, argue with morals, like I can point out so many Bible verses that are evil in some ways. Like, for example, in Leviticus 26:29, it says, "Eat the flesh of children," which sounds insane. And there's Bible verses of God, killing large numbers of people. So, and they try to argue that the Bible is all good and whatever. I don't think the Bible is the best tool that we can use. I think it's flawed. I mean, lots of religious books are flawed, and I just don't follow them. I don't see anything morally wrong with gay marriage or homosexuality in general. Yeah.
I don't. Well, and that's where this is where I would differ. I would say from a moral standpoint, I have a moral objection to it. I don't have a legal objection to it, if that makes sense. Like legally, like if we're talking about the law, what the government should be involved with, get married all day, right? But if you're coming to me as a Christian and you say, what is my thoughts on gay marriage, then that's when I separate it. But that's why I say in my brain, I separate the church and state. You understand what I'm saying? I base what I do not based off of quote unquote morality. I base it based on the legality of it, right? Like, for example, I think prostitution should be legal.
Yeah, me too, actually. Because
and it's not because I want to partake on it, but I'm just saying, my question to you is, once again, why are you trying to control what somebody does with their own body? Whatever they decide they want to do it, and whatever price they set for prostitution, the same way like you talk about like how drugs being legalized in some of these European countries, if you want to use the European model or whatever the case may be, then their legalized prostitution is safer than the street prostitution that we have here. It's always been seen that when it's legal, it always becomes quote unquote like, they have to have routine checkups, they have to have permits, they have to have all these different things in place to do their job. Now, morally, of course, I have an issue with prostitution. But from a legal perspective, I'm just like, why is it illegal? I don't understand it. That's the same way with drugs, same way with a lot of different things. Because like I said, when it comes to laws, I feel the only thing that should be legal is anything that would harm you or your property. Everything else should be legal. Everything else should be legal. There's nothing else that I can see, like if I'm not trying to beat you up, rape you, kill you, steal something from you, burn down your house, steal all your Xboxes, all your Xbox games and your controllers, right? Like if I'm not trying to do any of that type of stuff, and nothing I'm doing is physically bringing you harm or your property harm, then why is it illegal? You understand what I'm saying? Like, and that's just the way I think about the government. That's why I say that is when sometimes people take moral objections to something, because there's no reason why, for example, you got these prescription painkillers that people are just, addicted to. We have all these football players who have all these horrible different things that they've been addicted to for a long time. Meanwhile, I can't smoke a blunt. Like I'm a driver, I'm a truck driver, so I can't do it anyway. But even if I wasn't a truck driver, you're trying to tell me I could possibly go to jail because I want to get high? Like, it's not doing anything. I'm at my house, I roll a blunt and I smoke it. And you trying to tell me I could go to jail for that? Why? Oh, because it's damaging it's my brain. Let me damage it all I want to. The same damage that I could do to my brain smoking marijuana is the same damage that I probably did to my brain playing football, the game that more Americans love than any other sport in the world. And we're perfectly fine with the brain damage for football, but brain damage for marijuana, no. That's got to stay illegal because we don't really know the extent. But football, we're starting to see the CTE and we see all the different things coming, but we still love our football. So my question is, why, if I'm doing it to myself, why can't I do anything that I want to myself. And that's why I even say, like, even people talk about like the harder drugs and stuff like that. I don't care what it is. You understand what I'm saying? I honestly don't care what it is. If that's what I want to put in my body, let me do it. If that's what I want to do for my body and it makes me feel good, let me do it. You shouldn't try to restrict what I do. You understand what I'm saying? If I'm not harmed now, like you say, oh man, he was strung out on meth and he killed 5 people. Well, I either probably got shot by the police or I'm in jail for whatever period of time. But you understand what I'm saying? Like, I think like sometimes you start getting to the psychedelic stuff, maybe you should kind of regulate that. But at the same time, I just say, hey, I don't know. I think some things should be restricted, but for the most part, I don't.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
So I see like a lot of Christian extremists on the internet, like
Okay.
for example, the Westboro Baptist Church. They're crazy as hell. I see a lot of like Christian extremists trying to run for.
Hello. Hey, BJ.
Yeah,
Did we lose him?
I think it froze. Yeah.
Try to create laws.
Okay, he's back. Go ahead. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Hey, start again where you said Christian extremists because you froze for a second.
Yeah.
So they're like Christian extremists that run for office. Like, I know there are some Christian extremists that are really crazy. Like, for example, the Westboro Baptist Church. Like, they go picketing and they go to people's funerals and say, "Oh, God wants America destroyed and whatever. Oh, God wants
Right.
God wants facts and that whatever." I have a problem with them trying to impose like a Christian version of Sharia law on our government when they try to create laws for like preventing gay people from getting married and whatever. Because I see Republicans trying to do that. Like
Right.
Texas, we have a lot of crazy Christians and whatever. But yeah. So
Well, I think to kind of not rebut that, I would say there's a lot of crazy people. There's crazy people in every category. We need to agree on that. They're crazy Christians, they're crazy Muslims, they're crazy gay people, they're crazy straight people, they're crazy black people, crazy white people. There's crazy people in every single category. Nobody is default of not being crazy.
But I just have a problem with like extremists trying to impose laws to affect the lives of other people. Like people have no right to tell other people how to live their lives at all.
Correct.
Whatsoever. I don't care if it's a Republican or a Democrat. Like, no, like hands off. I think the government has no right to do anything in that manner. But,
And that is where me and you will always agree. I do not believe the government has the right to impose their rights or their beliefs on me or on the general public as a whole. That is what I say is that we will definitely always, and you'll never hear an argument with me on anybody trying to impose something on there, whether it be Christians trying to impose laws based on morality, whether it be socialists trying to impose laws based on their idea of how the planet is and climate change and things like that, and increasing taxes and stuff like the Green Deal or whatever, stuff like that. I think that those type of things put us at a dangerous point.
yeah,
But I like I said, I mean, you're what, 19 years old, right?
I just turned 19.
Okay, cool. Well, I hope, because once again, I'm all about, mixing things, right? I'm all about having different opinions and trying to find out. We don't always agree or we don't always have to agree, but where can we find some common ground and where we can meet it? And I'm hoping, because mine didn't, it's like I'm looking at it right now. Bernie's generation didn't get it done, right? If we drop down to Kamala Harris and Cory Booker's generation, they didn't get it done either. Now it's like my generation, who might be the next set of politicians to go in there. I don't necessarily know if we're going to get it done. What I am hoping is that maybe your generation can fix it, right? Which means that you can agree on a political ideology, but at the same time, you can still work together to try to come up with some sort of middle ground so that you can actually get work done. Because I know we didn't really talk about it, and I'm gonna kind of wrap it up, but like, for example, the whole Russia, Trump, collusion, obstruction of justice, to me, it's a huge waste of time, because we're focusing so much energy on this investigation, but it's like, okay, remember what you talked about. What about that lady who needed that healthcare bill to get passed, right? What about another thing that your people like to talk about is what about all those people stuck at the border, right? Who are still in these detention centers and cages, as y'all say, doing all these different things, right? What's going on with that? Nothing, because the only focus that we have is trying to impeach somebody or trying to focus on the president, and that's the one thing that I really dislike about Donald Trump, and it might not even be any fault of his own. You can disagree with him, you can call him a liar, whatever the case may be. My major issue with Donald Trump is the amount of focus that it's like he's like a magnet, and no matter how hard you try to just not even pay attention to him, it's almost like impossible, because like we spend all this time, we spend all this money on this investigation and all these different things, and it's like at the same time you're perfectly fine with them interviewing Mueller, because the thing about it is, go ahead, you're good. The thing about the whole Mueller investigation was what, right? They said, if you think about what was going on with Mueller, you could sit there and you could say, well, every single thing that happened with it could kind of sort of encompass all these different types of things. You understand what I'm saying? But it's like at the end of the day, the whole country focused on that, and we forgot about, okay, well, the tax rate was bad. Okay, well, let's find a better one that's more fair. If healthcare is bad, let's fix it. But we always just focus on the president, and that's my major problem with him per se. It's not, I mean, everything else that he does, I'm not saying that he's always right. I don't always agree with him. Like I said, I don't have no problems with the dude, but my main problem with him is the amount of attention that he draws, because I feel like with him in office, it's very hard to get stuff done.
Yeah,
So I'm about to say, yeah, I just saw the fam walk in the back, and I'm pretty sure y'all about to go have some family time in Florida, man. So like I said, George, I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate you being open-minded to coming on the show. We enjoyed having you. I'm gonna let you go spend some time with your family, man. And like I said, anytime you want to come on or something else happens, you want to come on, man, you're more than welcome.
Thank you so much. And can I shout myself out?
Yeah, please do. Please do.
Can y'all follow me at progressivism_is_key? Progressivism
On
is_key.
wait, I'm saying on what platform?
Instagram.
Okay, on IG. Okay, so progressivism_is_key.
All right. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful night.
All right, man. Well, you take it easy.
Thank you, you too.
Mm-hmm. All right. So that was George. Wow, BJ, you was pretty quiet back there, big dog. What happened, man? I thought you was gonna have some questions, man. I was just like, I mean, we was going back and forth for a little bit. I mean, it wasn't never heated or nothing like that, but I was like, dang.
I didn't want to feel like we was ganging up on him. So you were doing such a great job, so I had to.
Yeah, I mean, well, like I said, I just feel like, and that's just what I always say, when it comes to a lot of like these programs that some of these politicians want to say, and they say, oh, don't worry, it won't raise your taxes, and then it does. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just sitting there saying, if they're just honest with people and say, hey, look, if we do this, it'll raise your taxes. Are you okay with having the taxes being raised to do it? So be it. You feel what I'm saying? So I just think that, go ahead.
And what I would want to say, like, a lot of this stuff, like, we want to fix, the problem is we keep doing the same thing over and over again. We're trying to fix things in the system instead of changing the system. Like,
right.
What you're playing for healthcare, that's actually changing the system. That's not like with us doing all this insurance, like doing a countrywide health insurance. That's working within the system that's broken. We need to fix the system before we can.
Right. And see, that's just, like I said, that's just my main thing. When I sit back and I look at everything going on, I'm like you said, I'm all about solutions, right? Find me a solution to the problem. Don't just give me, and to me, healthcare, if you want to talk about the problem with healthcare, it's not necessarily the fact that the system that we have in place. The problem with healthcare is your fix to the system is to take away competition.
Yeah.
That to me can never be a fix, because we already, he already talked about corporate greed, and he talked about all the other things. So my question is, with this healthcare system, like, I mean, is it all of a sudden, like, is plastic surgery going to be covered? You know what I mean? like, I mean, what all is going to be covered under this new healthcare plan? I think, is cosmetic surgery going to be covered? I mean, is it any type of, whatever? I just feel like when you take away competition, then I feel like, the market fails. So, like I said, I think the main thing, and he was progressive. Let's get it right. I mean, he had all the progressive boxes checked. I just think that it's a point now where a lot of, and I'm not even knocking him, because I honestly and truly think that progressives want to help people, right?
Yeah, I do too. I do. I really think they do. I just think,
and I think that they think that with the policies that they want to enact will actually help people. Because, like he said, what about the poor people? What about the lady who didn't have the anesthesia, and she had to get the surgery without anesthesia? It was gruesomely painful. Like, you can kind of hear, like, it seemed like it kind of hurt him a little bit because of all the stuff that he had to go through, right? But what I am also saying is, why do I need the government to do that for me? If all of a sudden this time next year I'm a millionaire, right? Because I went out there and I had my successful transportation business, and I say, BJ, guess what? Here's $100,000, man. Go out and be married. Did I need the government to come in and say, hey, Solomon, you got to give BJ $100,000? No, I just did it myself. I don't need the government to be charitable. You understand what I'm saying? I could take my own money, which I worked hard for, and accumulated my wealth and do some good with my wealth. The problem is, a lot of people who have a lot of wealth, they don't normally do a lot of good with it. And I understand that. But my other issue is it takes to me, it takes the genuine nature out of it. Because if you now force people to be charitable, then it's kind of sort of like, I can't agree with that. Look, hey, rich person, I understand you're a selfie greedish, you're a selfie greedy rich person, but I'm gonna come take your money that you obtained, XYZ, blah, blah. But, yeah, man, I enjoyed talking to him, man. He wasn't, it wasn't as painful as I thought, because sometimes when people say they're progressives, I'm like, oh man, this could get really bad. But he was, when he started off by saying he was kind of libertarian and he was kind of against the government, coming in and telling people what to do, I was like, yeah, we can save him. We can save him. He just gotta, but he said he was left of center, but he's not one of those progressives, from what I could tell just from one conversation, of telling people they're wrong for how they think. You understand what I'm saying? Because a lot of progressives will say, this is the only right way, and if you don't agree with me, then that makes you wrong.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, we went a little bit over time tonight. But like I said, I'm about to wrap it up and probably watch the end of this Yankees-Red Sox game. Once again, this has been the Aftermath with Saul G. Joined as always with my boy BJ from Knoxville. You got any last words before we call it a week, I guess, because we'll be back next week. But you got anything?
Everybody have a good weekend.
All right, and then like I said, once again, I want to thank George for coming on the show. We appreciate it, and like I said, he's always welcome to come back. Like I said, even though we don't have to agree on the methods and ways to do things, there are different ways to get the same job accomplished. I just feel like let's figure out a way where we can do it where it doesn't impede on the liberties. The same way you don't want people to impede on the liberties of the LGBTQ community, I don't want the average citizen to have his rights impeded on for some sort of program that you want to institute as well.
Yeah, and a lot of times it kind of feels like progressives have short-term solutions to long-term problems. I think that's the main thing.
Yeah, and I mean the short term, it doesn't necessarily always work that way, but yeah. I guess we'll wait and see. But we will see everybody again next week, and hey man, until then, we'll see y'all next week.